Your comfort zone starts where the questions you ask start making the experts uncomfortable. But then you aren't even here for anything comfortable. Not for a cushy job, not for a 9 to 5, not for a fancy designation. You're not made to settle for anything less than what ignites your spirit. You're not here to write code. You are here to rewrite the future. You're not made to design games. You're here to change the game. You're not here to mark your attendance. You're here to leave your mark on the world. You're not here to be created for jobs, but to have jobs be created for you. You're not here for the purpose of making a living. You are here to make living full of purpose. You're not here to upgrade your skills. You are here to upgrade the life of billions. You're not here for the rat race. You are made for the human race. You are not made for anything small. In fact, you are not made for anything less than creating a dent in the universe. Hero Wired. Be made for big things.
Good evening, folks. So, welcome to this next event in the season of Sangam, restoring balance in STEM. Today's discussion is themed on Web3, this exciting world of blockchains, crypto, NFTs, and the decentralized and distributed web. In fact, I think there is an argument. Some people are saying that this may be a sort of a correction. The shift from Web 2 to Web 3 is a correction taking place of restoring balance. And we do have a very exciting panel to discuss this, the different facets. Because today is also special for another reason that we will soon have our director of IIT Madras, Professor Kamakoti, joining us. He is held up with some exigency right now, but he should be joining us in a few minutes. So I really welcome you all to this session, and hello to the Web3 team here. And before we get started with the panel, there is another very exciting task at hand. We are going to be unveiling a video called the AI Explained in 5 Levels video. Now, this was it's part of the series of videos which we are planning to take up under the theme of Engineering Explained. And the idea is to really explain complex engineering topics in easy to understand ways, where we would have professors from IIT Madras have conversations with people at different levels. School students, graduate students, and then industry folks, and so on. And so I'm really excited. I thank, today we will have our first one on AI Explained. I thank Professor Ravindran and Raghu Venkat from Active for sponsoring this, and all the others who have done a tremendous job. So Nishani, without further ado, can we have the launch of the video, please?
Sure.
A computer that could beat world champions in chess was built several decades back. But then, if a robot has to get up, walk out on this staircase, right, and go walk to the shop, buy the milk, and come back, we don't have a computer that can do that yet. Wow. Right, and that is a very, very active area of research in AI.
So do you think that it's very difficult for humans to program an artificial intelligence to have emotional or social qualities because it's built into our systems? We don't really have to work towards it much?
There are people who have bad emotional quotient and bad social intelligence.
Great. So I think I encourage all of you to watch the video and share it and retweet it and make it viral, please. Thank you. Back to you, Nishani.
Sure. Thank you, Krishnan, for those insights on the Engineering Explained series. That short video was really interesting, and I'm going to be watching the full one after this program. The link to the video is provided on the Zoom chat for you, as well as the YouTube comments. We would like to thank our sponsors, Hero Wired and Active, for the generosity in supporting IITMAA Sangam program this year. Web 3.0 has been hailed by some for the potential to democratize content creation and enable participatory interaction, while others have been skeptical of what they see as the unfounded optimism and the lack of transactional infrastructure. We have this exciting panel today to find out the hype versus reality of Web 3.0 and the promise of participatory commerce and content creation. We will offer you perspectives from different multiple industries and verticals. I would like to introduce the moderator for this event, Ms. Shalini Puchlapalli. Shalini is an alumni of IIT Madras, Civil Engineering batch of 1995. Shalini is currently the country manager for Google Customer Solutions, where she is building the digital ecosystem for India. She identifies herself as a feminist and is on the board of women-led not-for-profits. She has been honored as Young Global Leader 2015 by the World Economic Forum and 40 Under 40 Influential Leaders Award by Economic Times and Spencer Stuart in 2014. Welcome aboard, Shalini. IITMAA thanks you once again to be a part of this event today. I request you to now take over and start this panel discussion on Web 3.0, enabling technology or hype.
Thank you so much, Nishani. Web 3.0, everyone is talking about it. everyone, including people you don't know, are investing in it. Yet very few, at least I don't understand it. It's creating an essential FOMO, at least in me. To simplify this, we have this exciting panel. I'm thrilled to have four thought leaders and industry experts. Anjana Susarla, 95 batch IIT Madras, is the Omura Saxena Professor for Responsible AI at the Eli Broad College of Business at Michigan State University. Her research and teaching looks at social media analytics and economics of artificial intelligence. Her research has received funding from several companies and agencies, including National Institute of Health. She is also an author and a commentator on algorithmic bias and digital transformation on multiple international publications. A fun fact about her, while at IIT, she won a prize for Rangoli, despite having no drawing skills ever. I can attest to her having no drawing skills. Welcome, Anju.
Great to be here.
Next up is Balaji Padmanabhan, 93 batch, IIT Madras, is the Anderson Professor for Global Management and Director for the Center for Analytics and Creativity at the IITMAA College of Business, University of Southern Florida. His research interests are in the areas of machine learning and AI in the context of business applications. A fun fact about Balaji is that after spending 14 hours nonstop getting gift certificates from restaurants and shops all over Chennai, he left them a day before Badigra. He left them all in the auto. And ever since, he's a popular person for all auto drivers in Chennai. Now we know why we need to be so impressed with you, Balaji. Welcome, Balaji.
Thank you, Shalini.
Next is Madhav Darba. Madhav again is from the 93 batch of IITM and is the VP supply chain at Coupa Software, a leading SaaS company. He was twice recognized as Supply Chain Pro to Know for his contributions to the supply chain transformation efforts of several Fortune 500 companies. And this is something I find difficult to believe, but a fun fact about Madhav is that in his while he was doing final year project, he went to see his project guide, and apparently the project guide did not recognize him during the midterm review. This is something I completely can relate to, but I can't believe about Madhav. Finally, we have Rekha. Rekha Ranganathan is again from the 93 batch of IIT Madras and leads the imaging solutions team at GE Healthcare, where she is responsible for driving growth of digital and AI-based applications that work across imaging systems and deliver operational efficiency, better patient outcomes, and workflows. A fun fact about Rekha, she got the Worst Singer Award while at IIT. I was in the opposite wing to her, and that's a memory that I wouldn't want to recall ever. There's so many wonderful things about Rekha, but that's not one of them that I would want to recall. Welcome, Rekha.
Thanks for having me, everyone.
Now before we start the panel, I will ask Krishnan to come on stage again.
Thanks, Shalini. This was a great way you set the panel up. I'm sort of cutting in because we do have Professor Kamakoti. He has joined us. Hello, sir.
Hello, Krishnan. Hello, alumni. All of you. Hello.
Yes. On behalf of all the alumni of IIT Madras, a very warm welcome and best wishes to you in your new role. with our sort of twin missions of 5,000 ignited minds and mission million smiles. I think the alumni are ready to support you in your new mission direction for the institute. And I now invite you to give your address, sir.
Thank you very, very much for inviting me as a part of Sangam 2021. And I see that the whole theme has been restoring balance. That's what I heard from Shyamala. Yes, so today everything is about balance. We are trying to balance. The most important thing that I work in the area of security is to balance between privacy and security, right? So any policy that we pick up, that is the notion of balance, and I'm sure this is going to be an exciting and the most important thing that we need to look at. And especially when people work in the area of AI, there is certainly a lot of balancing act that we need to do between what we could put in practice and what would be the impact. And I'm sure this is a very exciting topic. I'm very, very happy about the mission. I did not know about Sangam mission, to be frank, but I did have as my agenda for the institute that we need to become very inclusive. I just mentioned in yesterday's press interview that more than 15 lakh people write JEE mains, from which 15,000 people actually get into the IIT system. We are as a premier institute, we need to be committed to also the remaining 14 lakh 85,000 students. And how do we do that? And that is where I see a lot of alignment between your mission that you have stated here. Now, mission 1 is mission 5,000 ignited minds and million smiles. Okay, that is your mission 2 in the next 2 years. From IITN, I'll be the whole institute will support the alumni in this very, very noble mission. It is completely aligned, not only with what I thought would be an exciting thing for the next 5 years to do, the most satisfying thing in the next 5 years to do, but also that there is a national education policy promoted by the Ministry of Education, and they also have a notion of trying to bring an inclusive, holistic education curriculum, and that is something that we need to address. And this mission completely aligns with it. So I just say this is grace of God and coincidence that we do. All of you have come, and we are all converging. And I look forward to working with all of you together in making such very important. So many times people ask, what is the use of IIT? We have a lot of satisfactory answers, but we have very few powerful answers. These missions will be very powerful answers for those questions. Coming to the next part, of course, my message to alumni. Yes, thank you for your offer. I'm sure alumni are with us. Personally, my first project, I've coordinated around 60 projects, but my first project and the second project came from Alumni Association, with which I started building the career. Now we have a lot more of young faculty, and I'm sure I invite all the alumni, whenever you are in Chennai, please do come spend significant part of your time at IIT Madras. The campus, we are trying to make, the campus is very green now. The campus is very green now. We are also having some very good facilities. We have been given the Institute of Eminence, and then we have made the hostels are very neat. You can come and see a little more modernized, but still we are maintaining the old charm with certain modern facilities. Lot of alumni have contributed to many hostels, and you can come and see a very wonderful campus. I invite the alumni, all of you, please let us all work together and make the mission and the thoughts to reality. Coming to what I plan to do in the next 5 years, one thing is that we are going to reach millions and millions of students. We are going to promote more online degree. Many of you would have known about the online BSc degree that we have started. Now we have more than 10,000 registrants, from which around 2,500 come for the had been shortlisted for the final degree program, and this is going to increase to 10,000. We believe that in the next 2-3 years we'll have around 10,000 students enrolled. That essentially means we have doubled our total strength. We have around 10,000 students here. Now it becomes 10,000 plus 10,000. So we have doubled. And within the next 4 or 5 years, we want to introduce many such interesting programs and make it around 50,000 students. And we are also committed to contributing to the vocational training. Vocational training is extremely important today with the modern technologies that are coming up. There are a lot of skill sets that are needed and which can give very excellent employment. For example, EV itself is a complete paradigm shift to the automobile industry. And so there are a lot of skill sets that are necessary and that we need to address. And we want to bring in certain specialized certificate programs plus certain interventions to augmented reality and virtual reality, wherein we make such trainings possible and take it forward. So this is also something where alumni in different disciplines can come and participate and take this forward. One of the other important things that we are doing is in the national education policy, we have a thing called Vishwaguru. We want to India should become a Vishwaguru. So we are trying to bring in a lot of internationalization. We have opened up 9 different international MTech programs. So we are trying to look at SAARC, ASEAN countries and try to bring in more international students to the campus. And we also try to open up some small centers in those countries and start giving some MTech programs there. So this is something which we are taking up. And last but not the least, we are trying to bring a campus, an administration that is very transparent. We'll continue to be very transparent. We are going to look at diversity and inclusivity in great detail. And we also want to improve what we call as the ease of living. So I am looking at AI from an hyper automation point of view, wherein many things would be digitized. We'd have a very good smart campus. I have a very interesting announcement here that 5GI, for which IIT Madras had made a great contribution under the leadership of Professor Bhaskar Ramurthy, has been now become a global 5G standard. It is first in at least 35 years of his career and 25 years of my career where we see an Indian standard becoming part of the global ITU, International Telecommunication Union standard. So we have certain exciting work and we would like to make a campus that is very smart and very easy to live, at the same time very transparent. And we wanted to make India's best destination for any student aspiring to do an engineering curriculum. And the role of alumni will be extremely important for this. If you have ideas, please feel free to write to me anytime. And my mobile is also available. So you can call me anytime. And I am available to you for any suggestions and anything that, including criticisms, to take with a goal to take institute to the next level. Last but not the least, Web3. Yes, Web3 is extremely important. There are pundits. I'm very happy from 95 to 2005, around 10 years, right? The alumni list who are come here, and I'm very happy to note that many of you are academicians. This gives me a lot of contentment that we have created many academicians from our institute. You are all going to talk about it, but my limited understanding of Web 3.0, this is becoming extremely important, and India is failing to capture some of the important things that are coming out of this, the major business that is going to come out of this, major commerce that is going to come out of it. And the type of web that we are creating, the type of data that we could collect, the type of services that we could give, if we are going to have a good intervention and good understanding, this is quite going to be certainly an economy changer. And that is where today Web 3.0, currently dominated by a small set of companies, should now become sort of more democratized. I think that is my view. And we have the big strength that we will have is the multilingual multilingual environment that we have in India. So we have this National Language Translation Mission, NLTM, which I believe will be a big ingredient into the Web 3.0. Of course, along with NLP and related activities, we have many startups coming out of IIT Madras. AI for Bharat is something that we are going to announce very shortly. There's a Robert Bosch Center for Data Science and AI, which Professor Ravindran is heading. Also does a lot of semantic analysis. I think the NLTM, all these things put together, we will have a good intervention into the Web 3.0. And I believe that we will have an exciting journey. I also strongly believe that Web 3.0 is one manifestation of the new AI machine learning generation. With these things, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very excited, and this is the first public meeting that I'm addressing after I took over as director of IIT Madras, and very happy that we have a Sangam here. Thank you very much, Krishnan. Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. First of all, the warmth with which you have reached out to us. Thank you so much for us. And we are inspired by your words, and we of course pledge our renewed support to you in this vision. The second, of course, this 10 minutes that you spoke to us, the trailer, like they say in the movie analogy, the trailer is fantastic, and exciting ideas that you've laid out for us. And like they say, picture abhi baki hai. So we really look forward to working with you and taking IIT Madras to greater heights, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shalini, back to you.
Thank you, Krishnan. Thank you, Professor Kamakoti. It was wonderful listening to you about your passion for both IIT Madras and for India. We are, of course, in great hands. Coming back to our panel, so the first question that I have for the panel here is, what is Web 3.0? Is this revolution, or is it just another evolution? Will it truly change the balance of power and participation? Anjana, if you could start off.
Yeah, in a nutshell, Web 3.0 was all about this decentralized version of the internet. So some of what we're hearing in Web 3.0 is really like very early generation internet enthusiasts. Before there was a World Wide Web, people would talk about the decentralization, giving power to the end user, and a lot of exciting things like that. The question though, the current generation of web is really sort of series of these gated platforms where a lot of surplus is captured by the person who has a monopoly power, like an Apple or Google or Facebook. They control a lot of flow of information in effect. The question is, what will Web 3.0 do? Is this going to truly transform that balance of power? And without taking too much time away from the panelists, I just want to say, it seems from a preliminary looking at what's going around, most of the power is still very, very concentrated. Bitcoin would be, in fact, the most unequal country in the world if it were a country. 2% of Bitcoin accounts hold like 95% of the 800 billion supply. So I think with that, maybe the rest of the panel would have a lot more to say on these topics.
Balaji, if I could pass it on to you to understand your perspective.
Thank you, Shalini. So I've always looked at these things as enabling technologies, and what are the building blocks that will create the next generation of applications. And so if you go back in time, at any point in time in our lives, there were certain building blocks. Now, what are those building blocks today that are significant? Now, certainly, blockchain-based distributed consensus ideas is a very significant one, and for reasons of the fact that you now have a way to ensure authenticity and correctness without requiring trust, and that's very powerful, right? So that is one. Second would be the maturation of ML and AI, as and now almost being available as a service, right? So machine learning and AI is at a stage that is truly usable in a wide range of applications and available as a service. Third would be, we do have both powerful computing as a service in the core and also edge computing. We have intelligent devices that can also compute, right? So this is another key piece of enabling technology that is going to power what people are calling 3.0. Now, probably the most important thing is culture, right? So, it is when we talk about restoring balance and so on, technologies will not restore balance. People do. And so the question is, at this point in time in our lives, what is that cultural environment that's going to work with these building blocks to create applications? And the cultural environment that we find ourselves in is one that is really thinking a lot about decentralization, that doesn't like power being concentrated and things like this, right? That wants a more fair world, a more just world, equal opportunities for all. And I think that we shouldn't underestimate at all, because that culture is what's going to help put these pieces together to build the applications that people are so excited about. So, I have the specific applications that later on in the panel, I'll throw out, which are not very lofty, but, more concrete things that we can achieve that have me excited for the potential.
Thank you, Balaji. That's super exciting to look at enabling technologies and culture. With that, I move on to Madhav, our supply chain expert, to talk about how this could enable us.
Sure, thanks, Shalini. Maybe I'll build on, first of all, with a simple example on what Anjana and Balaji talked about. So if you take video games as an example, right? So you go into a video game and you can either win by playing and crossing certain levels. You can win different types of swords, potions, etc., or you can purchase them. In-app purchases you can do. In the Web 3.0 world, anytime you acquire a digital asset like that, it comes with it attached what we refer to as a non-fungible token, NFT. What that is essentially a unique ID that is assigned to you, a property right that is assigned to you for this digital property, right? At that point in time, somebody else can come and buy it from you, or somebody else can come and lease it from you and pay you in turn in crypto, which you can in turn exchange for fiat currency. So interestingly enough, there is this notion of play to earn that is picking up in this Web 3.0 world. So if you look at that, this is what participatory commerce is, right? In the Web 2.0 world, when we participated, when we produced content, all we got was a bunch of likes and hearts. In Web 3.0, you can actually make money. Now, there is a very interesting example in Philippines when the COVID pandemic hit. I believe the game is called Axie Infinity. So people actually started playing this game and started earning money and earning livelihood and put food on the table for their families. What are the long-term repercussions on the society if everybody is sitting and playing these games and living in metaverse is a whole different discussion, but it just points to the potential of participatory commerce. Having said that, I do agree with Anjana about the disproportionate nature of Web 3.0 also. I don't think it's the cure-all, like Balaji said. It's not the cure-all for achieving equitable distribution of wealth. If you look at Jack Dorsey, he sold his very first tweet for $2.9 million. Right? If I were to go and sell my first tweet as an NFT, I don't think I can command anything close to $2.9 million. So that should tell you something about the disproportionate nature. Last but not the least, when it comes to supply chains, when it comes to business, all the metaverse, NFT, crypto, this is exciting stuff, but for businesses, it all comes down to the foundational thing called the blockchain, right? So there are some very interesting use cases in supply chain that are emerging around change of custody and how you track that using a blockchain, but hopefully we'll get into more of that.
Thank you, Madhav. The whole game sounds too much like Matrix at this point of time. With that,
Ready Player One, right?
With that, over to you, Rekha. Does it have what is Web 3.0 for healthcare?
Sure. So I think just to contextualize it a little bit first, right? Healthcare is a closed system. So to the point that Anjana made, most of us walk into hospitals and then we come back hoping that we are going to be healthy. So the big shift I see, whether you call it Web 3.0 or decentralization of information or access to more data, is putting a lot more power to do decision making around health in the hands of patients and the consumers, right? I mean, we live in a world today where it's all word of mouth about who is a better care provider, how do we access that care. I often joke and say that we have the choice to pick which restaurant we want to go to because we've got Yelp reviews, and even today we can rate professors, but we don't really rate the clinicians and the physicians who are the ones that are really taking care of us, right? I mean, and then the human body and health is probably the most important thing that each of us has. So for me, the big shift I see, and as an enabling technology in this decentralization of information, is this power in the hands of the patients and the consumers. I mean, to show an example, there is University of Utah here in the US that ran an experiment where they had physicians allow patients to rate them. I mean, they were very worried that the transparency of the rating would lead to less patients coming in. In fact, they actually went completely the other way. Patients were a lot more willing to come to a place which was very transparent about the health outcomes, what was the patient care that was being provided, right? So it makes it a lot more easy for patients to share information with each other, and then also, make the choices that make sense for them. The other big thing I see with this, Web 3.0, or however we want to call it, is the fact that when people make better choices, hopefully more systems get open, to the point that Shalini, Anjana was making, right? Systems get more open, there is a lot more cost transparency as well. And in healthcare, we really need that. I mean, it's one of the most expensive systems here in the US and in other countries as well. So my hope is that with information becoming a lot more transparent, people making better choices on health, this will restore a lot of the balance in healthcare today, which is very concentrated in specific systems versus, being available to all. So that's my expectation. Yeah.
Thank you, Rekha. This sounds utopian, where we know everything about our health. Looking forward to that world. Now, coming back to you, Madhav. In your recent article, you spoke about the benefits of blockchain as well as the weak links. I was fascinated by the thought of humans are the weakest link in blockchain. Could you elaborate?
Sure. I was speaking about it through my supply chain lens, Shalini. So if you look at the cryptocurrency world today, or if you look at a lot of what is referred to as DAOs, right, decentralized organizations that are behind a lot of these NFTs and so on, a lot of these are touchless systems because every transaction is digitized, 100% digitized. When I'm sending Bitcoin to somebody else, it's all going from point A to point B, the change of custody is happening in a completely digitized experience. Whereas when you look at physical supply chains, you actually have physical goods flowing through the supply chain, right? So a product could crisscross the world multiple times before it manifests in the form of a phone, smartphone in your hands. When that is happening, there are a lot of humans involved in that transactional process that goes on through the journey of that product that gets into the hands of the consumer. So anytime there is a human touch involved, anytime a human has to enter into a system of a change of custody, for example, doesn't matter whether it is powered by blockchain or doesn't matter what the underlying technology is, there is always potential for human error. It's one possibility in the best of circumstances. In the worst of circumstances, there is possibility for tampering. So how can you make the supply chains as touchless systems, increasingly touchless systems? And that brings it a lot closer to what blockchain already unlocked in the cryptocurrency world to the world of supply chain. So that's what I meant by humans being the weak link. So anytime a human interjects into a process, there is always that potential for subjectivity. There is always that potential for error. So that was my point of view.
Fascinating, Madhav. And I think that relates so closely to what Rekha was talking about rating doctors and healthcare facilities. So, Rekha, one of the things that I was wondering is, with this system where everybody has a point of view, what are the pain points that you are seeing in this set of technologies?
Before I talk about the pain points and how this enabling technology can address address some of these, a lot of things are not where they need to be with respect to healthcare. It's not as personalized as each of us would want it to be. I don't know if people know medical errors are the third leading cause of death. Right. And to Madhav's point about humans making mistakes, and we've seen that number, go up significantly now in, due to COVID. Right. We also have a situation where there's not enough same information in the same place for all the teams that are taking care of you. Right. I mean, the referring physician has a different set of information versus the oncologist has a different set of information. The surgeon has a different set of information. If you are a cancer patient, for example, and then taking the example of the flow of goods, right? A patient is flowing through the healthcare system. So I think that the part that I am really hoping for, while it sounds utopian, a lot of companies, both startups and large players like GE Healthcare, Philips, Siemens, Medtronic, and others are already looking to address. First and foremost is to make sure that we have technologies and data and information about patients that make care a lot more personalized, right? Make sure that either it is through the use of genomics data or data related to, what are the treatments that the patient have had. Let's at least make sure that we are targeting the treatments correctly. For example, if you're a cancer patient, chemotherapy may be good for one person, may not be very good for another person. The side effects may be severe, and radiotherapy may be better, right? So I think that's one of the big things the industry is doing with this access to information, is how do we make care a lot more personalized? And you'll hear this language quite a bit from all the players, right? The second big piece is, how do we use AI and this machine learning and deep learning a lot more responsibly, right? In healthcare, I don't think we are ever going to see a era where we completely get rid of the physician or the care provider. I think this is about how do we help the physicians make better decisions so that we reduce the medical errors that I talked about. So that's another big shift in the industry. I mean, there are about close to, I think, 1,500 plus AI and ML companies just in the field of radiology alone, right? I mean, and then cancer is another big one where there's a lot of AI. So I think that's really exciting. But what is important is that all these AIs and startups really make sure that they are connecting the technologies and the outcomes to what is really happening to the patient. The third big piece is, and I think COVID really accelerated this because everybody was remote. A lot of dashboards and a lot of analytics had to be looked at by multiple parties to make decisions, right? Because it was not always easy to be next to the patient. So we've seen a huge push for having a lot more remote analytics, data that all the providers can see at the same time. And I see a lot of good coming out of it if all of us use it in the right way, especially the physicians, and ensure that we are making optimal decisions for the patients and reducing some of the challenges that I talked about, right? Now I can go into it deeper when we talk more about what are some more good things that can come out of this, right? So that's what I see.
Thank you, Rekha. But can it be gamed, for example? Do you see that as having an ability to game in healthcare? Rekha, Anju, do you see that happening?
Let Rekha go first.
Yeah, so I think, at least in healthcare, one of the things that we are very conscious about is this notion of only putting AI or applications, I'll use it in the context of AI, that are really vetted and are showing real proof of improvement, right? I mean, so healthcare has always been an industry where the data is severely regulated, right? Everything is regulated. I mean, the FDA has to approve it, the DGCO has to approve it, the NMPA has approved it if you have to go to China. So there's lots of regulations already in place. That does slow down innovation, but at the same time, I think it's the right thing to do, from making sure that we are not diluting the quality of the care that is being provided, especially to patients. We don't have very good digital authentication mechanisms yet, which I think will be coming. The digital rights management for the data. I mean, I'm not talking NFTs, but the data of the patient. It's still very much controlled by HIPAA and all the GDPR privacy laws. I think if Web 3.0 can enable the authentication better, I think we will all be better off for it.
So quickly, the point I want to make is, I think most hospitals now, we don't realize hospital rooms have at least 5 or 6 connected devices, including hospital beds. And I think there have been these famous like ransomware attacks, hospital in California most recently. So people can just take over the hospital or make sure essentially that the equipment is non-functional. So the layer of authentication the extra layer of verification and authentication in Web3 is far from non-trivial, because right now, I think with digital platforms, the platform is essentially responsible for a lot of things that's sort of going on whatever is happening in the platform. Despite that, we have fake reviews proliferate on Yelp, fake products are proliferating on Amazon, fake accounts on platforms like Telegram, despite all these systems in place. So that's quickly what I want to interject, not to sound like this naysayer about Web3, but the authentication and the gaming and the manipulation also possible through adversarial AI and other methods, that raises a whole new set of issues that I don't think we have grappled with very effectively. We haven't grappled with it in Web 1.0 itself. So I think that's just to sound like this naysayer here. But back to you.
That's a great point, Anjana, because one of our biggest areas of investments across the industry is on the cybersecurity, right? And we are not even talking about authentication from an AI and a digital rights on, patient information. This is just The amount of investment that is going into cyber just because of these ransomware attacks is the other angle. And I don't know whether it belongs in 3.0 or 2.0 or 1.0, but it's essential, right, in order to make this right, because otherwise it could go south very quickly.
Interesting. We'll come back to that, Anjana, come back to the ethics and authentication. But to change the track a little bit, Balaji, I wanted to talk about all the hype on the JPEGs being sold for millions. Madhav talked about Jack Dorsey's tweet. How did we get here? Isn't it ironic that essentially a copy could be made, and that made anything free? And here we are buying stuff for millions. Does all of this have any real impact?
I think it goes back to a combination of culture and technology, both, right? So, because what technology has enabled us to do is to identify the owner in a very unique way, right? Earlier, digital goods could be copied and you have the exact same digital product, right? So it was difficult to say that Rekha is the owner and not Madhav, right? But now that's exactly what we can do with blockchain and authentication. So now that it is there, the question then becomes, if you buy a wonderful painting made by a brilliant person, you can hang it in your living room and say, this is a $4 million painting, only I can see it, right? Because this is the only such copy. Now, the digital version of this, anybody else can also see, but you are the owner. So if you hang it in your living room and everybody hangs it in the living room, you're not getting more value than anybody else. Everybody has the same product. But what gives you the value is for other people to recognize that you are the only owner, right? Yes, everybody is hanging it in their living room, but there is only one owner, and that owner is Madhav, right? So sometimes people have referred that to that as digital bragging rights, right? And so that's one piece of the puzzle. Now, that gets infinitely more exciting if you add smart contracts on top of it, where you can say that now when this digital good is participating in some virtual economy of sorts, maybe people are simply transacting that, then anytime that transaction happens, or maybe there's an original creator of this, there's a royalty that then gets paid to that person, right? So now there is a mechanism by which even for creating a unique digital good, a creator can get that royalty over time because you can point out the specific owner, right? So I think those things have come, and then the culture part is, do we want to do things like this, right? The game that Madhav said is a fascinating example. I followed it, and I followed a lot of discussions, and people are still fighting over it about whether this is a pyramid scheme or not, right? And there are terms like pyramid scheme, Ponzi scheme, and that simple question, to answer that question is not at all easy, right? Because it goes back to a very fundamental question about what exactly is value creation, right? And are you creating value or not? And the answer to that is what people think. If we all get together and agree on what makes something valuable, then that is valuable, right? Because culturally we've all put our agreement on that. And I think some of that is playing out. And when culture then attributes value correctly, then yes, those things have value, right? And I think that's what we will see in the NFT space. But if people are getting in simply because of the ability to sell it to the next holder, then those types of systems can quickly collapse, right? The last person holding the bag will be caught in trouble. So you will see a combination of these two, right? But if you give me a couple of minutes, I want to go back to non-NFT examples, because I think when we talk about Web 3.0, we have these very unique examples where people like to pick on those and beat it down, right? But I'm going back to, there are a few things, right? So, I work at a university, we have students applying for college, right? Simple pain points like authenticating whether their transcripts, did they actually get the grades they get, did they get the degrees they get, and so on, right? So if you had a decentralized way in which anytime a student does a course, gets a grade, gets a degree, it goes into a decentralized blockchain-based system that can authenticate this thing, then all a student has to do is apply, and then instantly I get all the credentials, and I don't have to worry about getting that eliminates weeks of headache. It eliminates middlemen who might otherwise charge fees and corruption and so on. Right? You have a daily wage laborer who does his work, work on some job, and AI would recognize this person, identify this person has completed a job, and when the person walks out, automatically money gets deposited into his or her account without him getting a check, having to go to a check clearing place, paying a transaction fee of 5%, and so on. Money is there, right? And so these types of things, right, can slowly get built. And it could come from sensor data too, right? So you have smart contracts in a distributed way, you're driving cars, and you enroll in one thing which says, as soon as gas is below a level or my electric car charging is below a level, somebody comes and fills gas automatically in a peer-to-peer distributed sense. And the smart contract, the sensor will put that information, somebody goes. So these types of experiences we don't have today. Estate management, wealthy people, when they die, right? What happens to their money? Right? Can they set conditions under which if my son or daughter goes to college and gets a degree, then they get $3 million, right? If this nonprofit, actually achieves and delivers food for 3 million hungry children, then give them, $8 million extra dollars. And even after the person dies and goes away, these smart contracts can continue to live and execute in a very decentralized way without having that central authority. So there are lots of these types of things. When you put blockchain, AI, and these authentication frameworks together, these types of experiences are there to be created. And I think that's what I'm excited about, to see what those types of experiences will be. Not only the people lost in metaverse playing games, creating digital pets, which I'm not discounting at all, right? If I knew how to do it, I would do it. So.
Thank you, Balaji. Anjana, I know this sounds fabulous. Are you seeing the flip side?
Yeah, I think that, Kashal, let's go back to games. I know that none of us are excited about playing games in the metaverse, but essentially just taking gaming industry as an example, gaming industry used to be one where they charged people for buying one game at a time. And then it's more like a pay as you go. You can download expansions or subscription or some sort of, there is like a pseudo gambling or some nudges and all these algorithmic ways to sort of get people to pay like a microtransaction. And there's this whole excitement around building video games in the metaverse using NFTs. Facebook, YouTube, all these people are getting into this kind of metaverse space. So does that mean, it means that you have to connect to a crypto wallet, you have to pay fees just to transact on this marketplace, and you buy that digital good, which is the NFT. Everybody else may have access, but you own the digital bragging rights, perhaps. And then you have to protect them from someone else could be stealing, because Google actually unveiled some feature. I'm sorry, not Google. Twitter unveiled a feature a couple of days ago and got into a lot of flack from folks who pointed out that they're really not doing enough authentication. So if Twitter, who has been in a leadership position, still has to work through these kinks, what does that mean for everybody else? And let's move from games to all this exciting stuff like college admissions. Colleges in the United States, this is a big issue that gets debated a lot, how to make college admissions more equitable. The other thing also is that a lot of kids probably just go to college and sometimes end up dropping out, which is a terrible thing from a system perspective. We need to make sure college kids are graduating from college. Is there something about this whole blockchain-based different method of admissions? Can we think of different models that will make this whole process more equitable? I think some of you have kids who are applying to colleges and you know how painful the college admission process is. Now think about someone who does not have our level of education and resources and cannot navigate through the system. Is there something? I think that goes back to a lot of observations that Rekha was making about healthcare world. And I would say Madhav said gave some examples in the supply chain world. Can we shift some of this power back to the folks who are in some disadvantaged communities or don't necessarily have all those resources. Can Web3 achieve that? I hope it can. But before it does, we need to have a lot more mechanisms in place. And that also includes making sure that these are equitable and people do not get priced out of the multiverse or the blockchain verse or whatever universe that Web3 is operating in.
Fascinating, Anjana. I think another thing that you've been talking about algorithmic biases and equitability. Here, will it make us more equal? I mean, specifically, do you see women getting a more equal space?
I think we had some discussion a little bit earlier, and Madhav actually mentioned this great example of women in Afghanistan who were using crypto wallets, and that the whole thing of what happened in Afghanistan when the official currency collapsed. Actually, at least middle-class people were able to use Bitcoin to at least bypass some of this traditional system. Anyone who's lived in African countries like Rwanda, which went through civil war, will tell you what a wonderful thing it is that there exist these alternatives to traditional systems. So going back to algorithmic biases and gender and so on, well, it's possible certainly that giving some of these models may mean more equity to people who traditionally lack. The companies like Robinhood have actually highlighted that their platforms have been more egalitarian to women and minorities. So that is a tremendous step forward, in my opinion. But coming to these issues of algorithmic biases and again, racial inequities, which something I've studied health, especially in the area of healthcare, the question then becomes that platforms like whether it's Google or Facebook, they've invested a lot in these content moderation policies. Google invested a lot in making their results racially less biased, for example. Would we see the players in Web3 undertaking, or will we see a similar, maybe a consortium of people who will provide more equitable, transparent training data that actually incorporates multiple perspectives? And how representative are any algorithmic models we are building? Does that truly represent the population? Those are questions that we should be asking. And I think we do have, without writing off Web3, there is maybe a tremendous potential to shape the evolution of some of these technologies.
So, Shalini,
yes,
can I comment on the gender
yes, please.
question that you're asking as well, just to add to what Anjana is saying? But before I get into my answer, I do want to acknowledge that in this panel, we're outnumbered by women, which I love. How many times do you see in discussions like this where there are more women than men, right? So to me, that's a positive sign. I want to
Clearly not a representative IIT panel just yet, right?
Clearly not a representation. Now, just to comment on Web 3.0, right? So CNBC has recently conducted a survey, and what they found was amongst the crypto investors, only 30% or so are women. Now translate that to NFTs. Almost think of NFTs as like the second derivatives of blockchain, right? So when you get into the world of NFTs and DAOs and things like that, there are even less women participating. So I think even before getting into gender bias, the need to motivate women to enter into STEM fields, I think, is the need of the hour. And each of us, especially men here that are listening, as fathers, as husbands, brothers, and friends, please do take this as a responsibility. But beyond that, in Web 3.0, some of the anonymity that we see in Web 2.0 and women objectification and things like that, I don't think those problems will go away, right? I mean, I could go into a metaverse and assume a gender, and nobody needs to know what gender I am, or good thing is blockchain nodes don't have a gender. But the problem is you may encounter objects that depict women in a certain way. You may find objectionable language. And in fact, in Web 3.0, it could be accentuated because you don't have a mechanism like Twitter that would deplatform you if you get into hate speech and things like that. So I don't think we found a perfect solution to that problem. I just wanted to comment on that.
That brings me
If I
back
can
to...
just add one.
Yes, Balaji.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one thing on the women in STEM angle, which I think is an opportunity here. Because if you look at Web 3.0 and the enabling technologies, but the culture, right, of building systems to promote fairness, equity, to take out the middlemen and the power, and to give everyone participation, I think this creates a more socially compelling use case, right? And there has been some research in the past that looks at what leads women to go into certain careers versus what leads men to go into certain careers. And at least, I haven't been fully up to date on that research, but what I had seen earlier was that women tend to prefer careers where they feel they can make a difference, right? Whereas, and that's an important attribute they look at even when they are young, right? What do I do? And this concept of making a difference, helping people, that's not to say that men don't do it, but I think women value it more, right? And I think, and it could be because of culture, right? So men may also value it, but less than women, right? So now, earlier, I think Web 1.0, 2.0 was all about people going in, cashing out, getting the next .com, making money, being powerful, and so on. And maybe that didn't appeal to women as much, right? But now you have platform and technologies that can create these applications that will truly bring people in, give people opportunity. And this can be this actually can resonate with some of the motivations for women in the basic place. And when they're young, if they realize this, they would say, you know what, I want to be the person who makes a change. And STEM is a way for me to make it happen, right? And so I think that awareness too, I think if we can promote these use cases that these technologies can enable, I think can also help in bringing more women into these professions. It is also how we sell it to them, right, at the right time when they're young. And so that I think is an opportunity we should keep in mind and see how to act on it.
Absolutely, Balaji. I think
Shalini, if I can add to what Balaji said, because I come from an industry where there are a lot of women. Actually, it's more women than men, especially in the caregiving side. I mean, nurses predominantly are women, and more we are seeing physicians also be women. However, there is still a lot of bias when patients make choices, or you see somebody who is or of a different skin color sitting and giving you care. I mean, if you look at Twitter, and I follow a lot of physicians there, they talk a lot about their experiences where if you're a woman doctor who walks into the room, it's immediately assumed you're a nurse and then not a physician, right? So I think one of the outcomes I really hope this Web 3.0 can do is if there is more transparency, and I go back to my notion of ratings, people make choices based on objective ways of choosing your care provider versus whether the person is white or black or brown or what have you, right? I think that's one aspect. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I know we talk a lot about NFTs and Bitcoins and etc. I mean, the example that Balaji gave of college admissions really resonated with me, because I don't know if anybody has actually filed paperwork for insurance. It's like 100 times more painful than college applications, right? So I think there's a huge opportunity there. If we can make it much easier through Web 3.0 or better authentication to enable this whole, how insurance providers are getting payments back both to the hospitals as well as to the patients from a claims point of view. I didn't want to lose that thread for those of you who are interested in healthcare, because it's completely untapped at the moment. I haven't seen anything. I mean, everybody talks about AI startups and cyber startup, etc., etc. I mean, how are we solving fundamental billing issues and scheduling issues using using bitcoins or AI or distributed web, right? Not the sexiest thing, but it needs to be done. It's probably a lot more opportunity there. So.
And if I can make a quick comment, I would say that, in addition to authentication, verification, and everything, the thing we have not talked about is governance. We need very clear governance structures as well. So if anyone remembers this example, there was this group of people who were bidding for the original copy of the US Constitution, and then they lost out. But what essentially happened for that, the Constitution DAO, which is the decentralized autonomous organization supposedly enabled through Web 3.0, it didn't even have, the founders had not figured out how, let's say, a few holders, they call the whales, they can just take control. So it's supposed to be a group of people, then it was truly participatory. What can be more democratic than a group of people owning a copy of US Constitution? But then in reality, it can very well end up that a few people just own that Constitution and everyone else does not have the same rights. So, not sounding like a business school professor wearing my business school professor hat, the governance is also very important. Governance structures and sort of having the split of who gets the surplus and what's the fallback option when things don't work, enforcement, all these sort of non-fashionable things. I think those would be as very, very important, more so than all the hype around this revenue and transformation and everything else. So just
Going back
quickly.
to you, you've been talking about fake news, and we've all been part of this fake news around us. Do you think this authentication, do you think this blockchain would enable fake news or real news?
So that answer really depends on the balance, not to equivocate, because on the one hand, fake news has actually proliferated in the more on open platforms. So things like Parler and Telegram, which have a very hands-off approach to content management or content verification, there's much more fake accounts and fake news compared to the more mainstream social media platforms. But on the other hand, there's also things, when we talk about fake news, let's say Facebook, AI, they've done a great job of using self-supervised learning to identify near fakes. So when we know that there is a piece of fake news, and if we have that whole blockchain-based verification and transparency, that probably would be a very good thing in terms of establishing a sort of a line of truth or something like that. So I think the devil is in the details, or God is in the details, as you prefer. But that's really what is going to shift that balance in the Web3 world, from my perspective.
Thank you. And I think I would just want to close my set of questions with a couple of questions to Balaji. The first one about equitability that you were talking about. Ajay Banga has been saying that Bitcoin cannot help the unbanked. It wouldn't help the bottom of the pyramid. It wouldn't help Afghan women is one use case, but would it help the real people in need? And are you seeing use cases?
And this is a great question, right? I think we have a terrible track record of designing systems that help people at the bottom of the pyramid using pure technology and entrepreneurship alone. And it goes back to how economic incentives are set up, economic models are set up, and so on. So unless you have economic incentives to build systems that truly add value there, it becomes harder to do it, right? Now, at the same time, I think, one of the things I was saying, building blocks that we have here, one building block is culture, right? And one element of that culture is the recognition that we have to share value with the people who are creating value, right? And as a small example of that, when you have users online spending a lot of time on these social networks, and their attention, their data is monetized by the platform owner, that is now being questioned, saying if you are the person who is providing information and your attention is a key product, shouldn't you get value from that, right? You being the individual or a bottom of a pyramid user of this network. And so in Web 3.0, we may be able to design systems that give those people value, right? Being able to give 95% of the value back to people for their attention, right? For their time, right? So that, I think, is what the culture sets up, right? So culture sets up as saying design a system like this. I don't like the system where people's attention and data are being monetized so that the owners, a very select few owners, are then extracting value. I want that value to be given to the people who are actually creating that, right? Or shared with people in a more equitable manner. So I think that line of thinking, if pushed more, will create systems that can start doing things like this, that can start helping those things. Now, the other things are, simple things like what I was talking about, right? So, authenticate, giving somebody an opportunity to get a job, right? So if we had a system where someone can demonstrate a skill, and you're a person, in a village, and you know how to, make, something with wood, and you're able to then show that you make it and put it on a system that authenticates you and say, here is a skill that I know. Then tomorrow, if there is a job that requires that, they should have a way of directly saying, hey, I know, I have proof that you can do this. Here's a job for you, right? And so all of a sudden, a person who may otherwise have had to, get a lot of doors open to get a job, now may get a job directly because their skill is being captured and stored in a way where anybody can authenticate. So, do we have these systems now? Not yet. But I think if people start thinking about these types of use cases to truly help the bottom of the pyramid, then we will actually help the bottom of the pyramid, right? So it's not going to happen by magic, right? So, and I think unless we consciously design those systems, it won't happen. Because and part of it is also, like, we talked about the economics behind it, right? A lot of people, these things are funded by people who expect returns on investment, and there's nothing, that's how the system has worked in the past, and we definitely need a rethinking of that.
I mean, to actually, this sounds utopian, Balaji, but we've heard that, again, value is being captured by certain entities, something which Moxie Marlinspike has been talking about. So how do you think about it? Are we actually going to build something like that? Or is it somebody else, a set of new people getting power?
It's people have different, thoughts on this and views on this, because I think some of what he has also brought up are basic issues like, when we think of all these decentralized applications and the things it enables, we shouldn't underestimate the infrastructure that's needed to power all of this, right? Our individual phones are not going to do this, right? When we need a big computing infrastructure behind the scene that needs to power all of these things. And what are the incentives for people to create it, maintain it, do it, and provide it? And if all of that is not there, then this will stay utopian, right? Now you have to solve that piece of the puzzle too. And I think in the cryptocurrency world, that piece has been solved in a sense by having direct financial incentives for people to build those kinds of computing infrastructures, right? So that has to play out in all of these other use cases too. Now, a cost of that, of course, is efficiency. Like, people have brought in this notion that these distributed solutions many times may not be the most efficient ones. The environment, power usage, all of these things have correctly come into focus as well. And Anjana mentioned governance, right? So you could have nefarious groups of people create these systems, and you don't know who they are, and their end goal may be very different, right? And I think today, even though you have these decentralized platforms, people know who they are, right? If I have a problem with how a social network is gone, I can go to Facebook and talk to them, right? In this new world, that becomes harder. And so when unexpected things happen, governments and others whose job it is to manage their societies will have problems, right? Will not have a specific person or persons to go and talk to figure out how to fix. So these are not simple issues at all, right? And these are not issues we can sweep under the table. We have to assume that bad things can happen, think about what those things are, and then think about as a society and what kind of policies can mitigate it. So there are those challenges that I think some of which he's mentioned that are going to be, I don't want to call these headwinds because they may be tailwinds too. If they are actually pushing us and the concerns are pushing us away from these things in certain cases, that may be a good thing. So I would like to bring now a question that I got on the panel, which I just wanted to bring up to you in case you have time, is just this boundaries. What is Web 3.0? What is not Web 3.0? We addressed it at the beginning, and I think people had asked about it. Do we want to draw boundaries on this and say this is it and this is not it? I'd like to get maybe a few seconds of quick thought on some of the others, and then
I was actually thinking that also, if we look at the present model of a lot of platforms dominating commerce, platforms have also gotten too big. Essentially, we depend on Amazon or Google or Facebook. They have essentially a very outsized sort of influence in sort of shaping commerce, shaping how we consume news, shaping also all our social interactions are all being mediated through. So in a sense, if there are alternate models and we can choose between this platform world and maybe a decentralized world, that may give more choice to all of us, including maybe sometimes there is fake news and fake accounts and so forth, but that has always been there through history. Technology has not created these problems. Essentially, they were always nefarious actors. They were people manipulating the system. We just have newer ways of maybe creatively doing it with technology. So the question then becomes, what is it that Jack Dorsey was right in sort of, he made this point that the Web3 models are essentially subject to the incentives of the actors. And he used the word incentives, which is interesting because, well, without the incentives, nobody is going to invest in building these platforms. They want to get their cut, or they are operating in this fee-based world. They need to grow their user base. So that brings us, and that's, I think, the question. Web3 is probably where web was in the 90s, if we can think of. So what is the future going to look like? Well, definitely we are more concerned about these issues like equity and authenticated news sources. We are also more concerned. I think we definitely want to see more of these processes put in place that no one thought about maybe 30 years ago. To me, that's a very positive development. I think to answer to Balaji's point of, yes, maybe we'll see all these entrepreneurship, and maybe if we can put some guardrails, to use a term from the responsible AI world, I think the same conversation can happen in the Web3 world, having more transparency, having explainable systems, having equitable systems. That might go a long way in ensuring that the process is more equitable to all.
So just to build on what Balaji and Anjana said, I think Balaji, you alluded to this. DAOs, or the decentralized organizations, are not without their defects, right? If you look at how a DAO functions, essentially behind the scenes, it's a software code that is determining that, setting up a governance structure, and then making changes. How do the changes get made? People vote, right? People who participate in the DAO vote, but the votes are proportional to how many NFTs you carry. So there is always that potential to corner a DAO, right? Yeah. And control the, call it the propaganda, call it the charter, if you will. And that ties back into the fake news aspect as well. So these are some risks. I don't see them going away with the Web 3.0 world, even in the decentralized world, right? Just to highlight another point is some of the platforms from which, if you want to monetize your NFTs, there are things like gas taxes that people have to pay, which could take a significant cut of the proceeds, in which case those with scale would have a disproportionate advantage in terms of even redeeming what's currently sitting as their digital assets. So these are the kind of things that we need to think through as well.
So I have another question for the panel from one of our the audience, which is very interesting. General discussion on Web 3.0 is dominated by concepts like crypto, blockchain, NFT driven from the West. Is there an Indian point of view? Where do concepts of UPI, UHI, India stack fit in? India stack has led to so much of fintech. What would you think about it?
Can I take a crack at it, and I will talk about the role of India in this whole AI and all the work that is happening. I actually have found in the healthcare domain, India has been much more at the forefront of some of the things that we are seeing in healthcare, at least from bringing in AI and ML and all some of this applications to the market, because the healthcare system in India allows a lot of access to information that the US system does not allow. So I don't know, of the sort of 1,500 plus AI companies that I alluded to, I would say probably close to about 40 to 50% are either in India or in China. And then some of the companies, at least that we partner with, are predominantly in the space of AI are from India. All the big MNCs. There's a company called Cure AI, which is based out of Bombay. There's lots of companies. The list is long. So I think using the information, whether you are doing it through UDI and all of these things, and also the access to information in the healthcare system and the throughput of patients that are there in India, I think there's a significant role to play in this world where global companies like ourselves, we really don't care where the technology is coming from anymore. It's about what's the benefit of the technology, right? So I think, I know I'm not specifically answering your question related to crypto and Bitcoin and all that, but India has been in the forefront, at least from an AI and ML point of view in healthcare.
So maybe I can add to that from a crypto standpoint, right? And in general, Web 3.0, India has got so many fintech startups right now. The fintech startup ecosystem is healthy. That should tell us something. But I think there is another big opportunity. If you look at China and the direction in which China is going, China is right now behaving like they are threatened by this Web 3.0, right? If you look at how they are tightening the grip on crypto possession, crypto mining, and so on and so forth, it should actually open up a significant opportunity for India, and just given the level of intellectual capital and potential exists. But of course, it requires the right government policies to enable that kind of a transition.
Yeah, I was absolutely going to say this as well. China has now banned a lot of crypto mining and a lot of, and Chinese policies in recent times seem to be also, they are trying to put in a lot of policies to curb the power of their top technology platforms. So it's kind of going towards the direction of regulation. So maybe India is the great new frontier that, we have all these great companies like Chinese companies like Alibaba in the crypto world and the Web3 world. India could see a lot of innovation with the right mix of government policies and maybe encouraging these zones of experimentation, which is something that China has done with great success. And then all these wonderful institutions like our alma mater, IIT Madras, the younger minds of in India right now can maybe play such a great role in sort of shaping the future of all these technological models and innovation. So I personally also see it as a great opportunity for the Indian ecosystem.
Wonderful, Anjana. Balaji, any closing comments? We are actually dot on time.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I would just say about India and Web 3.0, I think Web 3.0, the main building blocks are definitely not geography or country specific, but it's the culture aspect that can be country specific, right? And what some of those environments are that create those applications. Yesterday, in a different context, when I was talking to a group of people, somebody asked, saying, "Hey, can this be used to automatically collect taxes? If all our transactions are stored securely and in an authenticated way without fabricating things, does it mean that we won't have to file taxes anymore? That there's a way of doing that." I said, there might be interesting government applications of this technology, but society should be willing to jointly say, yes, we think this is a good idea, right? So, but I think that goes back to, briefly to that comment on Web 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. I think if one way of simplifying, so do we want to call cancer technologies as Web 3.0, right? We probably would not. Like that, we draw some boundaries. But when we took a Web 1.0, the units there were people, information, and connectedness, right? That's what Web 1.0 brought people together. Web 2.0, in that paradigm, it allowed people to be content creators, right? In Web 1.0, the information was created by certain people. And in Web 3.0, some of the differences are that yes, all of this is happening, but in terms of value creation, we want to provide the value back to the people who are creating it. And because Web 2.0 did not do it, and some of these technologies are supporting how to make that happen. Now in Web 3.0, in terms of information, people, and connectedness, we also have agents and programs that can act as people. And that's where some of the ML AI ideas come in as well. So I think when I sort of draw the boundaries of what is and what isn't, I try to simplify it and saying, we have information, people, and connectedness. And what is changing here are technologies that change how these three things are interacting with each other to deliver value in the context of culture.
Thank you, Balaji. I think that was a succinct summation of what it is all about. I would like to thank our audience for being patient and listening to this wonderful panel. I personally have learned quite a bit, though I've come back with more questions on evolution than answers. But I believe questions are the first port for a better tomorrow. So looking forward to more such conversations. And I would like to thank IITM Alumni Association for enabling us to have this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shalini. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Shalini.
Yeah, thank you, Shalini. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Nishani?
Yeah, thank you, Shalu, Rekha, Anjana, Balaji, and Madhav. I think this was a very, very extra special conversation for all of us. I mean, such a complex topic like Web 3.0. I think you guys really simplified it with all your use cases and stories. And I'm like already charged up to, take a chance to understand more and play, like Anju said, like play a part in shaping how this Web 3.0 is going to impact us. And I must say that's always special when we hear these conversations from our own alumni. Somewhat feels like you're talking in the hostel wing about Web 3.0. And I don't know how this last 1 hour just went by so quickly. So thank you so much for taking time out from all your crazy schedules to be part of this conversation. I also thank Professor Kamakoti, Director IIT Madras, for joining us and sharing his vision today, addressing us. And we look forward to being part of his impact in making education more inclusive. I think that's a very, I should say, impactful mission that he's taken forward. And we hope as alumni and as IITMAA, we can facilitate and join this journey with him. A special thanks to our sponsors, the Hero Wire and the IITMAA team that's brought this program together. We look forward to meeting all of you who joined us today. Throughout this season, we have more programs coming on. And the next one is by Krish and Gagandeep Kang. Do join us next Saturday, 29th. Thank you, everybody, once again. And thank you for this special panel.